Good morning, everyone. Let's call the meeting to order. And we have Sue, we have Mark, we have Jim, who has returned, Mike G., Bob, Michael K., and Rob has returned. I didn't hear from David. I know I know he was planning to be away, so I guess he is. Okay.
He's out of town, coming home today.
Okay. All right, and we have two visitors from Colby, Sawyer College who are going to talk to us about a potential project, Peter Gribben and Malcolm Cleveland. And let's get right into that, so we will make the best use of their time.
Mike, did you push start? We're up.
Good. Having a little trouble with this high-tech stuff, but we're getting there. Okay, we received a brief email from Professor Nick Bayer alerting us to this project and asking us to hear a description of your project. I'm going to ask if you could come up to the podium here, push the button till you see the green light, and then speak into it. This room, the acoustics were improved, but it's still at times a little difficult. So,
Sure thing. All right, awesome. Yeah, so like you said, I'm Malcolm Cleveland. This is Peter Gribben. His voice is a little hoarse, so I'll do
okay, can you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, sure thing. Is this better?
That's good.
All right, awesome. Sorry, I've never used a mic like this before. I'm Malcolm Cleveland. This is Peter. So we're just coming in today just to talk to you guys a little bit about what we're doing for our third year project at Colby Sawyer. So every year, at least pretty much every year, depending on if there's enough students, the third year or the juniors in the environmental science and environmental studies do a project. It's called our community-based project. It varies every year. Last year, they did a lot of work around Pleasant Lake, where they were essentially doing phosphorus and nitrogen sampling across the whole lake to get a better idea of phosphorus loading. This year's a little bit different. Actually, it's quite a bit different. We're trying to create a monitoring program that can be used by conservation groups across the country and private landowners on the small scale, so it's easier to implement. So we're doing everything from game cameras that we're placing, that we're trying to figure out how to place currently. We're testing a bunch of different ways on how to implement them throughout a forest. We're using bat acoustic monitoring with ultrasonic sensors, and we're also using bird monitoring devices, which we haven't put out yet, but we're hoping to put those out. So we're essentially coming today to just talk to you guys a little bit about what we're doing, because we've reached out to a lot of the local conservation groups. We're working pretty closely with the Forest Society and also Osmond Sargent. A majority of the lands that we're working on, I believe, are through the Forest Society, and a couple are through Osmond Sargent. We're currently on 5. The Black Mountain Forest, Langenau Forest, Cassie Brook, Messer Farm, and then on campus at Kelsey Forest. So we're practicing our different tests throughout those different forests. And we kind of just want to reach out to you guys to see if there's anything in particular that you guys would be interested in us kind of implementing into our monitoring, any constraints you'd be interested in looking into. We're already on a very small scale. We're using just a handful of game cameras. I think we have 5 ultrasonic sensors, but those are 1 at each site. So if you're going to be working on one site, they'd be kind of just necessary for 1 or wherever you want to look for on monitoring for bats. Birds, again, we're a little out of season for the migratory birds. We're kind of trying to cater to the birds that are already here. For the non-migratory, we're thinking maybe some winter monitoring. But essentially, if you guys had anything that you were interested in finding out, anything that you've had an interest in the past in monitoring for that we could look for in our project, or maybe implement and create a process for monitoring so that we could convey that back to you guys so it'd be easier for you guys to do. Pretty much anything like that. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I can add a couple stuff.
Sure thing.
Excuse my voice, I'm just getting over a cold here. So as far as sampling goes, we're looking at a couple different sampling methods. We're looking at, or so far, we're looking at random sampling, and we're looking at adaptive cluster sampling. Yeah, it is still in its infancy stage, so we're still looking into how we're going to monitor these areas. We have some cameras out just to see how the settings work, some preliminary stuff, some preliminary data, so that's pretty much what we have going on right now. So, yeah.
And a lot of what we've been doing so far is through GIS. That's kind of how we're planning on implementing our different sampling types. So like Pete said, with random sampling, what we're kind of doing to start, or what we've been intending to do at the start, is going to an individual forest, and we have the different stages of a forest that we can look into, and then random sample hopefully within those, so we can monitor within each individual forest type in a forest. That was kind of something that we were looking at, and like you said, the adaptive cluster sampling is something we've been looking to. With it being such a small scale, and the same thing with a lot of the organizations around here, even the larger conservation groups like SPNF, they don't have the resources to do grid sampling, which I know a lot of people would think would be the more effective way of doing it, because you'd cover the most ground. But it's just not feasible, not for us or really for any of groups like you guys, because not only is that an immense amount of resources, but just manpower, it's just not feasible. So that's kind of what we're trying to get into, is that a lot of these large scale monitoring projects that have been going on and the techniques that people have made just aren't feasible for places like us. So that's kind of the product that we want to deliver to the community and to our stakeholders.
I don't know what adaptive random sampling means.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what adaptive random sampling means?
Yeah, sure. So adaptive cluster sampling is you start out with a random sample. So say we generate random points on a grid, and wherever the random points fall on the grid, you put a point, and then you put the camera where the points fall. After that, say we're monitoring for a certain species, right? If we see that species at one of our random sites, we cluster around the site where we see the species, and then that's basically the premise of adaptive cluster sampling. And the data analysis for that would be a bit more complex, and we would need a lot of data points for that. So that's one of the constraints we have about that one. But yeah, that's what adaptive cluster is.
Pete is our GIS guru, so he does a lot of stuff online. He kind of goes through and tests all these different sampling sizes and types that we need to convey into the class. And it's kind of an ongoing thing, trying to figure out exactly what we're doing, because there is so much leeway with what we're doing. Trying to pinpoint how we're going to address things, what we're going to experiment with, how we're going to utilize the land that we have access to. It's making it kind of tough for us to kind of start with a direction to go on, which is why we want to be with you guys, in case there is specific things. And I know that we're not in any of the easements that you guys currently are in control over and running your conservation through, but we are still actively trying to find things that are of importance to conservation groups, which is part of what we're trying to deliver as a product. So if there's certain things that your group is looking for, whether that be tree species, mammal species, bird species, bat species, anything like that that you are interested in and would like to understand more about the process of monitoring for, that's something that we could try to implement into our project, which is why we wanted to reach out to you guys today.
Okay. It would seem like, obviously, we have limited time this morning, but it seems like the next step would be to set up a meeting with you folks, along with any members here that would like to be involved.
Absolutely.
And we have your email. If you have a couple of times, dates that work well for you, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll see. We'd like to learn more. We have some projects going on that we'd like to make you aware of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we meet every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Friday is kind of our field day, or that's what it's more turning into. But Monday and Wednesday, we meet from 10 a.m. to 11:45, often a little bit later than 11:45 towards 12. So if either of those days work for any of you guys, you can meet us then. Or if there's another time outside of that window, if you reach out to us, we can try to make time for that as well. We're pretty flexible. But yeah, we'd love to
Okay.
talk more with you guys.
Yes, Jim.
One thing we have had a challenge with
Can you
is,
turn your,
it is on,
it is.
so I'll pull it over closer.
Ah,
Is that
there you
better?
go.
We've had a challenge with beavers.
With beavers, yeah.
Yeah, so anything you guys came up with, techniques for kind of trying to monitor them, that might be useful to us.
Yeah, we could look into that. I mean, I know certainly with some of the audio sensors we do, I mean, the rarity of a beaver, flapping its tail against the water might be pretty minimum, but we could look into that. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely something that would impact conservation efforts and, overall habitat health and well-being. So that's
Yeah,
definitely something we could probably look into. I'll talk to my professors about that.
thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark?
I have two questions. Do you monitor your cameras remotely, or do you have to, be in proximity to the camera to?
Yeah, so we actually have to be in proximity so far. We've been going out to each individual site. We started with doing it weekly. Now we're thinking we're going to do it more bi-weekly or even further to not kind of put our scent all over it. But we've been going out to individual cameras, pulling the SD card, putting it onto a personal computer, and putting it back and going out. So our field days on Friday for some groups are pretty busy. This last week, Pete and I, as well as our classmate Hunter, went out and we were trying to put out cameras, and we were out there for like 5 hours.
Thank you. That
absolutely.
reassures me because that's how I do it.
Yeah, no. The ones where you can do it remotely they're so much more expensive, and it's, if you have the willpower to go out and do it, it's worth it.
Second question, how are you going to share your results or publish your results?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, I believe we're planning on it being, is it December 5th?
Yeah, so it's December 5th. That date will come out. Oh, here, I can walk
Yeah.
to the camera. It is December 5th, I believe. We're doing a end of the year, or end of the semester, a presentation, kind of like a midterm, just like last year's. And we haven't chose a date for the end of the year, but there will also be a presentation for that. And we will also publish a sort of writing piece. We're not quite sure on what that will be yet, but it will be in writing as well.
I think we'd be very interested in the results, so
Yeah,
you'd keep us in the loop on that. Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we are currently working on newsletters. The frequency in which those are going to be going out, we're not sure of yet, but we are planning on sending out updates to stakeholders, and we'd be happy to send that over to you guys as well. We're not sure the method in which we're going to send it out, but we know we're going to be sending out, so.
So you have Bob on your distribution list now, and Bob can circulate it to us.
Absolutely. All right, perfect.
Okay, any other comments, questions? So we'll get a couple of dates from you.
Absolutely.
And then see where we
Perfect.
go from there.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us today. We really appreciate
Well, all
it.
right, well, thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course.
Yep, put our info on you. Sure thing.
Okay, let's go to permit applications.
Okay, well, we had the special meeting about an expedited wetlands permit for 153 Owl's Nest Road, which was approved, but I haven't seen any other permitting other than that one item. So that's the only thing that we had since last month, and that particular permit was approved by us for an expedited review.
Do we need to approve those minutes, Mike?
Yeah, I thought when we get to doing the other minutes, we do them all together.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Nothing else came in.
Okay, next item is the meeting minutes of September 18th. Do we have any edits?
Just a couple of misspellings on the Trails project, et cetera.
Can you turn your mic on now? Mike?
Thanks. Two misspellings under Trails projects. Second bullet, Osborne, just misspelling, Osborne Sergeant. And then about 4 lines later, Osborne Sergeant again. Just those two.
Any others? Motion to accept as
So moved.
modified? Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Do you want to do the special meeting, Mike?
Yeah, so we did the special meeting on Thursday, October the 10th. And present were Bob, myself, Mark, Michael Kennedy, and Sue Andrews. And since we were the only ones there, I'm guessing that we would be the ones to approve the meeting minutes. I sent meeting minutes out, though, to everyone here, and I didn't get back any feedback from a standpoint of changes or additions. So if there are none, I will make a motion to accept those minutes as distributed.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you.
Mike, did you send those to Carl?
I wanted to get it approved here first, and then I'll send it, because I thought if there's any edits, I would make them and then send it over. So they'll be going out today. Yep.
Okay. Trailhead street numbers. Have we made any progress on that, Mike?
No, we haven't. I did do a follow-up with Kara about that, and I asked if we could at least get Shaker Street done, the first one done, but haven't heard anything back yet. So we're still waiting on that. So it's still a work in progress.
Okay. Can we follow up, see if we can get a date?
I will.
I can make that sign as soon as I know the number.
Right.
Sue and Mark, anything on town-owned lands, conservation easements, monitoring, process, and reports?
I think hopefully people are starting to do the monitoring. Dawn and I went out to Spring Lunch Farm the other day, so that is pretty.
Are you on there? Can barely hear you.
I'm sorry. I just forgot. Don and I did Spring Ledge Farm the other day, so that's done. I just have to send the report in to whoever I send it to at the state. And other people have said they'll do the ones. So I think it's just ongoing. We're supposed to do something next Tuesday, Jim and I? Is that?
Yeah, it's next week.
It's next week, I think.
Tuesday,
It's
you're
Tuesday. We're going to do the Lion Brook one, Pelfor. Does anybody else have anything to say?
Just as a side note, Sue, I have had calls from 3 monitors regarding town lands, and they were all pretty much the day before or the night before. The last one was yesterday afternoon, stating that they were going to monitor at 10 o'clock today and wanted to know if we had somebody who would like to join them.
Well, I thought you told me last time that there was 2 that you were interested in going on.
No, I corrected that. I was not so much interested as going, I was interested in talking with them.
Okay.
And the one really wasn't quite sure where their parcel was. And this is something I've brought up several times, and I kind of understand it could get complicated, but I do not understand why we do not list the parcel number. And I understand that the parcel number does not necessarily describe the easement. The easement could be more or less land. Some of them are multiple lands, some is part of a parcel, but there are 3 or 4 parcels that involve Phillips around Park and Ride, and they're very small parcels. And some people don't know where they are, and I'm not sure I know where they are without having a parcel ID number. So, I think for some people, it's a little confusing.
Well, I don't know exactly who's doing what. I mean, if it's a new monitor for a parcel, they've been told to contact the landowner potentially and tell them that they're going on the walk, but they're probably going out with someone from Osmond Sargent, so they may not be up to date yet on exactly where the parcel is if they haven't
Well, these
ever done it before.
these were town-owned parcels, very, very small parcels.
Okay,
And they were just confused, and I wasn't clear where they were either. So I don't know, apparently they had nothing on their
we,
paperwork that they were issued.
Osmond Sargent does not track the map and lot number because the map and lot number has changed over time. Since they started, and it's just, I mean, we talked about this with Ann. I mean, I guess I could try to go through the ones of people who are going to call you and just try to write down the tax number on them.
Well, we finally did the GIS 101 and figured out where it was. But a lot of people are not familiar with that tool, which is really handy. But,
So-
okay, I just mentioned that it's,
I'm confused as to what you would like, because do you want to go out and walk with any of these people? My impression was we were trying to set it up this year so there were less calls to you about asking the landowner questions. Mark and I handled that with Ann one day on all the properties. And then the monitors are not really wanting someone to come. They're being polite and offering that you could come. So that's why I was trying to ascertain which ones you wanted to go on, and we would make sure that they would set up a time to go with you. Otherwise, they're just trying to do it. They're not requiring that you come along on the visit. I'm unclear as to what you want.
I was curious whether they had any specific questions, that really may or may not be related, but we know one parcel, there was quite a to-do over no hunting.
Right,
And-
so that's the kind of question that Mark and I tried to handle already with
Okay.
with
Well, the
Ann.
person monitoring had no idea of that issue.
Well,
And for what it's worth, they should probably at least know.
it's in their packet, so
Yeah.
I think that they will be aware of it by the time they're done what they're doing.
Yeah.
Perhaps they called you just off the cuff before they really read their whole packet?
The night before, I don't know.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, I often don't read the thing till then.
Anyway,
Going out there.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? No? Okay. Let's move on. We work.
Before we go too
sure.
much further, I'm going to recommend, because I know that this is getting a little like on and off with the microphones. Since we're kind of spaced out, I think it would be better just to leave the microphones on and near you. And then if you wanted to do an aside with someone, you can shut it off. But I think it might be better just to
Yeah, good point.
leave the microphones on and close by so we can pick up the conversations. Thank you.
Okay. Those who expressed an interest in working on the 2026 budget did have a meeting, and actually it was quite a bit of data we went through. As you may recall, last year we had an increase for a number of reasons. Part of it was we used some labor that we would have otherwise used in the bog. And at any rate, our request was about 31,000. And at the first budget meeting with the selectmen, we were asked to reduce that by 10%. And, you know, that's what they wanted us to do. That's what we did. So that left us about 27 and change. This year, we didn't have, there's a lot of stuff in here, and we do budget for some things we just don't know whether we're going to need the money for, and a lot of those have to do with land acquisitions, the associated fees. It could be a survey, it could be environmental evaluation, a number of things that they all add up. We need the money if we're going to close on the land, but if we don't have a project, then we don't have the expenses. So as a result, we don't always use all of our budget. But after looking over materials, intern time and so forth, we came up with a number that was about a 15% reduction. And, you know, we figure that's what we can do. We did put in some money for invasives and a few other items that we have not really. It's hard. You know, resources are an issue, and it's not always just money, it's time. We're involved in a lot of things that take a lot of time, and it's largely volunteers. So that's what we have submitted to Kim. That will go to the selectmen, eventually to the budget committee, and I'm sure there will be a number of, you know, scheduled hearings that we'll need to go to and then answer any questions.
Bob, what's the number that we're asking for this year?
The final number is, got the wrong piece of paper, sorry. $26,496. That's roughly a 15% reduction. We have also, although they don't really want to know this at this time, but we have just confirmed that we did vote last year and again this year to request a $75,000 contribution to the Land Acquisition Capital Reserve account. So we'll see where that goes.
What was that amount again, Bob? How much?
The budget,
No, for the capital reserve?
$75,000. And we said if and when we reach $750,000, then we will regroup and reassess. But if the system's working, we would never get there because we'd have a purchase come up. And that's frustrating. We don't really have, other than the one pending acquisition, which is a real important one, and that's 088, 2006, which is now going on 3.5 years, waiting for the realtor, the property owner, and the property owner's counsel to come up with a proper deed, and then we can close. But that, I don't understand why that's taking so long, but it is. But, so we haven't had an acquisition in over 4 years. So we need to find another project as well.
Bob, I'm just wondering, with that 26.5 number for next year, is it going to become routine that the selectmen ask for a 10% reduction in whatever you ask for? And if so, would that allow us to do what we need to do?
Yeah. Well, we were asked that question last year. Apparently, all departments were asked to
Right, yeah.
reduce by roughly 10%, and I guess it was a request, but it pretty much sounded like that was
Sure.
what was going to be. So I was asked the question, how does that impact you? You know, are there things you won't be able to do? Well, certainly. We don't know what they are right now because as we get closer, you know, you're a year away, so there's certain things that we're not going to know until we get closer to the time. So, you know, we did say there'll probably be something we can't do. But remember, we're only 3 months into the 2025 budget. So we have 9 more months to go before we get into this 26.
So I mean, it's really actually mid-25 to mid-26,
Yeah.
this budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it won't start until July 1,
Next year.
25.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So we will do our best, and as we get closer, you know, we do have some Mary Haddad Fund money that was earmarked for the bog, so that's available to us, and that's what we really want to do is finish up in the bog. And I think we're getting close. We've made some wonderful progress this year. So, that's it for the budget. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Bog Walkway Garden Tundra Loop. Don's made a lot of progress in there with railing posts and other things. You want to give us a quick update on what's been going on in there, Don?
Sure.
Come on up to the,
Sorry. I guess in the last month or so, most of my focus has been on adding railings. I've probably put up, I don't know, about 40 railings. I'd like to do, I think just looking at it, I'd probably like to do about another 40 more. Might need a little bit more lumber to finish up. I have put 2 bench areas out. I moved the bench that was at Grand Junction is now out on the Tundra Loop, and then just yesterday we put in the nice bench that Bob built. I don't know if any of you saw the picture.
Looks
Yeah,
great.
Looks very nice.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Nice job, Bob, and Don.
yeah, nice craftsmanship. I did go ahead and add additional wood chips to the, after it had a chance to settle for a month or so, I added additional wood chips this week to the trail. I used, I don't know, another dozen or so wheelbarrows full. So our pile is starting to dwindle. I think there's still plenty to do what we had planned to over at Kidder Cleveland. Yeah, so that's it. I guess from here on out, I want to finish up railings. You said the rope's on order. We'll get that put in. Maybe one more bench platform, and
yeah,
I think we're done for the year.
good.
We'll see what next year brings, right?
Good, excellent progress, a lot of really favorable comments from the public, so that's nice to know. It's, You've done a great job, Don.
I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe for all of us, but Don especially. The Grand Junction area where the aluminum walkway is, over the old pressure-treated sort of triangular config. What's our view on, do we just leave that alone, or do we clean that out, or?
I guess we could walk over and talk about it sometime. I'm not exactly sure. I think we did talk about building a platform there for a bench, which kind of goes in the corner. If we want to leave the other wood, we can. It is convenient for where we stack lumber. I don't know if ultimately we want to leave the lumber stack there if we put a bench. But I think we can get to, if you'd like, Mark, the next time we're out, let's walk and talk about it.
Well, what's the view of others on that?
Well, I wouldn't see any benefit in removing what's there. I mean, it's a nice staging area, but Don's point, to put a bench in there, it would be nice to have it walkway level. So you're not stepping down into it, which is what, 8 inches or whatever. And then fix the bench, not that we're worried about anybody taking it, but just so it doesn't get moved around. But that's a convenient spot. I mean, when you go out to Tundra now, I mean, that's a pretty long walk for some people without a place to rest, so it's nice that, there is a place for people to sit down for a couple of minutes if they want. But I don't know, does anybody see?
Yeah, I think, right now it's a work in progress area.
Yeah.
But I think when we feel like we're finished what we're doing, since that is such a central location, that we should make it look more finished. And a bench or two there, I think, would be lovely. But right now, I think it's necessary that this be a staging area, because we have created a monster in terms of how far one needs to get from Route 11 to there to wherever. So, but eventually, I think that should be a nice looking spot.
And the reality is that in the not too near future, we're probably going to have to do maintenance here and there. So it's a nice place to bring lumber and, because if you were to take that out, it's going to be mud,
Yeah.
Would we consider, so it's sort of a triangle right now with an open middle? Would we consider making it one big area that was all platformed over? Because it is quite a good gathering place, like if you were a school group or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's something to look at.
Okay.
Yeah. The photo that you shared with us, Dawn, of the school group,
Yeah.
that was a pretty good crowd.
They had, Hopkinton had 80 students in there on,
How many?
80
80, okay.
on Thursday.
That's a crowd.
Their elementary school group. They were actually, it was well done. They had a teacher come a couple of days before, and she labeled dozens and dozens of plants, and they had sort of the students doing a scavenger hunt to find all the different types of plants, and then they were well chaperoned and well behaved. It was a good group. They were younger. The younger ones tend to be a little less, I don't know, controlled, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah,
Great.
it was nice.
All right, thank you.
So I guess just to close that discussion, I guess for now at Grand Junction, I'm going to focus on getting a bench area, and then we can talk about how we eventually pretty it up, maybe add a platform. That'll be kind of next
Yeah.
step, even in the spring. Does that make sense?
Agreed, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you, Don. Okay, we know of all the work that the American Chestnut Foundation, Vermont, New Hampshire chapter has done for us, providing us with quite a lot of fencing wire, posts, labor, matting material, and we now have Shaker Street, pretty well done, except we do need a few new cages when we get more material next year, but Clark Lookout is upgraded with 6-foot-high cages, and we have a tentative plan next year to do the remaining 50 trees. And I think Dawn's got things fixed up in there, so hopefully the critters will stay out of there until next year. So they really did a lot. They actually donated a couple $1,000s for this project, and that's something it would be hard for us to do. So, great. They had a group that harvested burrs or nuts back 2 or 3 weeks ago from some prime trees in Vermont. And then they took all these burrs in great quantity back to the president's house and recruited volunteers to come and open the burrs and get the seeds out. And I think we all had conflicts for that date. There wasn't a huge amount of notice. It was, what was it? What was the date again?
The 9th.
It was a Wednesday.
The 9th of October in Bethel. And Mark and I went, and I'm going to ask Mark to tell us a little bit about his day. It sure was interesting.
It was daunting. At first, they had, oversized bags. What were there, a dozen of them full of husk. So there were thousands of
21 bags.
21 bags.
Yeah.
And what were there, 8 of us in total?
Yeah.
But, and we had a contest to guess how many viable nuts we were going to get out of that. And all of us underestimated. The final number was 11,000.
Yeah.
Wow. And you guys shucked all of those?
We shucked them all. A lot of them had opened up, and it was fairly fast process.
But it was a lot. These burrs are, well, they vary in sizes depending on the trees, but it basically looks like an urchin. Mm-hmm. And they're about as sharp. So you need to be wearing heavy leather gloves, and there's usually 3 seeds if they developed. And it was a lot. It was a lot. It was fun. They did their usual barbecue at the end, and it was a good time. It's a very interesting group. They have more nuts than they're probably going to have homes for, I'm not sure. We got a bag of 50 from the trees that we got the seeds from last year, which were by far the best seed nuts we've seen so far. And then another tree in Lindenville. I don't know much about that tree, but these are established trees that never got the blight, and they haven't shown any signs of blight. So hopefully they will continue the cycle. So they gave us those, and I took them back the next day. You have to do about a 12% bleach solution to clean them, then dry them, then put them in bags, perforated bags of peat moss that's dampened but not wet. Then they go into stratification, which means you put them in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 months or until spring at 39 degrees, ideal temperature, and hopefully the radicle will start to grow. And then at that point, you're ready to either permanently plant them outside, which we don't usually do, or put them in the deep pots and put them in a sunny area. And that's what we've done in the past years. That way you don't have to worry about critters, because there's a lot of things out there that are just waiting until you finish planting that nut so they can come immediately and eat that nut. And this is hard enough as it is. So, it looks like we're making some progress with this. It's, as I keep saying, it's not like growing white pine. These trees require certain conditions. But I thank you, Mark, for your time and effort, and I learned a lot from it. I had never done this before. Any comments, questions on
Just
that?
one thought, the president is threatening to move to Pennsylvania, and we have started a nice relationship with that chapter. Are you concerned at all that we will be able to continue beyond his?
Well, there's no question that the current president is totally committed to this project, and he's on top of it, and does an awful lot, follows up on everything. He's very organized. He's able to get groups together like this. But there are others there that have a lot of history. So I'm hopeful that somebody else will take over. This is Vermont, New Hampshire chapter, and some of the people, I think the vice president's in Plymouth, New Hampshire, so they're pretty well spread. So I sure hope so, because I'd hate to see this dwindle, but I guess he's already bought a house in Pennsylvania and trying to sell the house he has. But it's a real good group.
I have a question. Maybe it's not the right time to bring it up, but turns out there is a similar program that's going on with ash trees. And I don't know anything about it, but someone at Osmond Sargent was alerted about it. And I don't know if that's something the Conservation Commission wants to find out more about. But they do have the ash trees already grown as small seedlings and are looking for places to plant them.
So these are going to be resistant to the borer?
Well, they're trying to figure out if they are.
Okay.
It's a,
Well, it would seem we should certainly be informed, find out what's going on, and then figure out, if it's something, a lot of these things initially are not costly to do in terms of money, but they take time.
yeah.
So you need somebody that's gonna, and it isn't like you just do it once. There's usually ongoing maintenance and so forth. So we might want to start with our Extension Service forester, find out what's going on with this project.
I can find out more about the
Yeah,
project and let
yeah,
you
we
know
ought to
if
at
you're
least, that's good to know because there's a lot of standing ash that's dead.
Right.
And, we were advised to take some at our last harvest while it still had value, because once they get all wormy, they're not worth much. So, yeah, that'd be good to know.
Okay.
Anything more on the Junior Trail Patch program? I know you had
I
some.
mocked up I don't know if you want to call it a logo, but I mocked up I guess we'll call it a logo that would be used either for a patch or a sticker or whatever, and I sent that over to Putnam. So I'm just waiting for his feedback on that. I mean, it can be tweaked. Basically, it's a stock photo, basically, of a, I shouldn't say photo, but it's a representation of mountains and a trail. And then there's a hiker in the middle. And then on the top it says New London, New Hampshire, and on the bottom it says junior hiker. So it can be tweaked whatever way Putnam might want to modify it, but basically it's just a very straightforward thing that we can get reproduced fairly quickly if we decide to go with
Right.
that.
Right.
So that's where that stands.
Okay. We received a message from Ella Doherty, who is the AmeriCorps member who this year will take the place of Anna White, was it last year? As the program leader. She's based at Colby Sawyer College. She wanted to talk to me, which I'm happy to talk to her, but I invited her to this meeting, but she was unable to come. Hopefully she can come to our next meeting and tell us, what their plans are and so forth, and how we can help. So we'll try to do that. We talked about the Low Plain parcel, waiting on the seller's attorney and realtor. The Bog Road wetlands, parcel 119002, also known as Clark Creek. We're monitoring the new water level gauge in the culvert. It's been running around 0.55 of a foot, which is roughly 6 inches. This last rain, we had about 1.5 inches of rain, and the water level went up just about that level, and it could be draining in the tributaries, but I think a lot of it probably went into the ground where it was so wet. But it was reading just under 0.7. So that seems like a very acceptable level. And we've been monitoring that. Water's moving, but moving slightly. You have any comments, Jim, on that?
Just in between all my trips, I had time for a visit with Bob to see the bench halfway finished, and I went down the creek, and just like Josh did, I found 3 small rebuilds, nothing substantial, nothing like we had last spring. But I did tear them out. I have pictures if anybody's curious. I only have 1 copy, but if people are curious. So
Okay.
part of the monitoring, we will have to go in there occasionally and clean it out, or else it's going to get big and nasty like it did last time.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
I have a question. There was some thought early on in this process that it was more than just beavers that were building dams. Do you have any sense of that?
I don't know enough to tell, who did the construction. I certainly have seen, what's the other critter with the narrower tail?
The muskrat?
Muskrat. I've seen muskrats when I was in there, but I don't know that they,
Do a
build
substantial-
dams the same way beavers do. But I've certainly seen them when I was in there. The beavers are hard to see. You only see them once in a great while. They stay away from us. But the muskrats were a little more, I don't know, adventurous, willing to be seen by people.
Okay. Messapon Natural Area sign, Dawn installed that. That was a good location, Dawn. It looks good.
I have a follow-up question there too. Don, you said you got bluestone from the town garage for that project? So is that something other of us, can Joe Citizen go take bluestone from the town garage, or can we for conservation?
For what purpose?
For Conservation Commission
Yeah.
project?
I would certainly ask Sam or ask Nancy, but, usually we're talking a couple of 5-gallon pails.
Yeah.
We're not going in there with a loader, taking a truckload of it. But that packs very, very well, and I think it's easier than using Saccharine or something like that.
Mark, Nancy just asked that we stop in the office and just tell her that we're heading out and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it was only so if somebody asked who's out there grabbing blue, so.
Right.
So
Right.
she
Okay. Walkway donations. How's the piggy bank been doing, Mike?
We still have a steady stream of income on that. I've been going a couple times a week because the maps have been disappearing rapidly. And every time I go to reload the maps, I also check the box. So since last month, we took in $119 and some odd cents. So total for this particular, I'm calling this the Phase 4 income, if you will, but it includes the $3,000 we got from Muskoma and some other very generous donations that we've gotten from individuals. So collectively, we're sitting at around $7,500 right now for the income, but we are continuously getting money in the piggy bank, so that has worked out very, very well. And especially now with the improvements that have been made, I think people are very, very thrilled about how great the trail looks and are willing to give us a few extra bucks to make it even better.
Right.
So it's going well.
Good.
And all of the people who gave donations via check have all received thank you notes, including Muskoma Bank. So all those
Oh, that's
thank
great.
you letters have gone out.
Perfect. Mark, do you have any update on the technical assistant grant and the signage at the bog?
Yes, I do. I keep promising to give you mock-ups of the signs, and I don't have them yet. We've given all the content to the UNH Extension Service folks, and they are doing the mock-ups. But I can just list for you now what the 14 interpretive signs that we envision. Well, there'll be a new trail map. There'll be a sign about the bog, formation of the bog, an Esther Currier quote, a bog history and timeline, wood warblers, resident birds, butterflies, dragonflies, ferns, carnivorous plants, orchids and other rare plants, sphagnum, trees and shrubs, and the future of the bog. So I think that whatever that was, 13 or 14 is what we're envisioning for signs.
The other one that we need to talk about, we've sort of talked about it, but in detail, whether it belongs in this series or some other place separately, but we need to do a Mary Haddad plaque. You know, well over half of this funding has come from the Mary Haddad Fund, so that's, but it needs to be properly worded and to be accurate. You know,
We could try to work that in.
yeah.
Do you want to draft a
Well,
paragraph?
let's you and I talk about that. Janet Kidder knew her very well. They were close friends. And, you know, as far as the accuracy of when she was here, what she did and all that stuff, you know, I wouldn't want to guess at that. I want to make sure it's absolutely accurate, but yeah. And then I have a sketch of a mounting device that I'd like to go over with you and maybe Dawn and see if you think this would work. You know, it's something very affordable and very secure, and how we want to attach it and so forth, because that's something we're going to have to do sooner or later.
Love to see it. Would it be compatible with wood and aluminum?
It would basically be wood wrapped around a delineator post, and then the base of it could be attached with wood to the underside of the platform. You know, a lot of flexibility, but I'm assuming there'd be places where the ground's going to be pretty firm, and then other places not so firm. So we
True.
may need varying levels of, secondary support, but I think it'd be pretty easy to do and affordable.
Good, yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, okay, good. Good, okay, so do we have any idea when we might see at least a couple of drafts that?
November meeting? Or maybe?
No,
get-
well, for these signs, so we could, I'd like to see a couple quotes, and then maybe have like a sample made just to look at and decide if that's the type of construction, presentation, so forth, that we really want. Because this thing's got to be durable. There's nothing we want to be replacing in 2 years, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Sure, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, Mark, were you thinking signs like we put out in web?
yeah.
Okay, so we have a sample that's actually been in the weather for a year that could be viewed to see how it's held up.
Where is this?
There's 4 of them on the
On the
trail.
Webb Forest Trail.
And are they plasticized?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
And we have, our own history with some sign makers, and then the Extension Service has sent me a list
Yeah.
of who they work with. So I think we've got a lot of vendors to choose from.
Okay, we ought to just get some rough pricing to see if our specific donation is going to cover it, or, whether we have to find some more funding.
I agree. Just the Webb Forest signs were about $200 each. So I think we're probably run up against this $3,000 limit when you add the hardware for the posts and such. So
And
maybe
these
we
are
have-
large enough, visible enough, so anybody can read them.
Oh, yeah,
I would think so.
yeah,
Color,
they're like this big, the ones in
yeah,
web.
okay,
They're like that big.
okay. Good. Let's see, the Arbor Day hike, which was on the 12th. You want to talk about that, Mark?
Sure. Well, we only had actually 2 official guests. I thought it was interesting, though, there was a number of, other people enjoying Clark Lookout.
Who just happened by
Just
and,
happened
yeah,
by.
yeah.
It was a nice sort of cross-section of who uses the Clark Lookout. One interesting thing, Mike and I regularly stocked that tiny library, and I had stocked it. It was full a week prior, and it was virtually empty for the Arbor Day hike. So any of you, I guess, ongoing encouragement to check the tiny lot, the one at Great Brook and the one at Clark, and contribute books
Yeah,
It seems-
I put 2 boxes of books into that library.
that
so
day. Yeah.
It's it was refilled, I shouldn't say it still
Right.
is.
It seems.
However, the one that's at Great Brook doesn't get nearly as much usage. That one's usually in pretty good shape.
I check that pretty often, and I think you do too, but yeah.
It seems like the outbound is
Oh,
largely exceeding the inbound.
always does.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
the inbound could be junk, we don't want that, so.
We have had, unfortunately, situations where people put inappropriate things into the
Ah.
library box. I've had to weed out, business flyers and cards and magazines and all kinds of other junk that people have put in there. As a matter of fact, there was something that somebody dumped in there that attracted ants.
Oh,
So I
God.
had to take all the books out and clean it out and get that out of the way. But you're right, more people are taking than leaving. But the good news is that most of the books that I've gotten through the transfer station, and most of them are decent books. Not as many outdoors type books as I would hope, but some of those. Kids' books, so we have a mix. So there's, fiction, nonfiction, adult, children's, some of it related to the outdoors. So it's it's working. Certainly people like it. Because if the books are disappearing, then certainly people are enjoying using it. But I will have to, I was waiting for next month because I think things will slow down as far as visits go when the weather gets a little colder, but that box needs to be refurbished. The front door has to be removed and refurbished and then put back on again, so
Okay.
I'm going to have to shut it down for a brief amount of time.
Okay. Dawn? Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
Just checking in.
Okay. Well, thank you for all your help and support. Greatly appreciated. Our next meeting scheduled for November 20th. Same time, same place. Do we have any other or new business?
I have one small item. The Lake Sunapee Watershed Association, or Protection Subcommittee, they are actually working with Nick Barr, our health officer, to try to put in place a septic system. I guess it's an ordinance similar to the one that was done in Sunapee. Basically, all it says is you have to have your tank pumped and you have to prove it. So you can't neglect your septic system. And it was put in place in Sunapee in the 250-foot buffer zone around the lake. What they're proposing in New London is just the whole town. So,
Any enforcement?
yeah, in Sunapee, there is an enforcement officer that will check that it's being done. So
But we don't have one.
we do not. So that's one of the things they're asking the town to do, is to add enforcement, so that just to know it's happening, and if you feel that's a good thing, support it. So the way they did it is through the health officer. The health officer has the ability by law to put in place a septic rule, and then the Board of Selectmen ratify it and make it happen. So it doesn't have to go before the voters.
So New London's planning to do it that way? Because Newbury
That's what the Watershed Commission is trying to do through
trying to,
Nick is a friendly health officer, unlike the one in Newbury who told them to go pound sand.
right, and then they had to go to town meeting and then it
Correct.
didn't pass.
It didn't pass in Newbury because it went through, people's had to vote on it. And so, just so
Okay.
you know, that's happening.
Anything else?
Yeah, one more thing. We had a walk with Tim Fleury and Dode out behind at the Kidder Cleveland Clough to look at the glossy buckthorn. And the takeaway was, there's not much you can do, and learn to live with it. So, and I guess that's sort of a philosophy that they're exploring with invasives in general.
They implied that other stuff was competing okay with it, correct? So it's not wiping out the winterberry or,
I asked the question, if the beavers rebuild and it floods, will that kill the buckthorn? And the answer was, well, it will, but the shoreline will become the new buckthorn heaven, and as soon as the water recedes, we'll be right back where we are now, so.
One comment I would like to make if we're on this topic. Kidder Cleveland Clough, the buckthorn is very, very well established. There's nothing we're going to do about it there, but I have seen it in a few places in Crescenti Bog, and it might be worth discussing next year, thinking about trying to pull that stuff out of there, because if you let it go and it gets to the point where it establishes itself way like it is at Kidder Cleveland, then there's nothing we can do. But, it seems to be pretty contained at BC Bog right now. You can see it as you look through a little bit here and there. So, once it gets hold, if you wait 10 years, you'll never do anything about it. So, it's just something you might want to think about.
So would we uproot it, or what, at the bog? Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do with buckthorn is, and if it's bigger, you can potentially, you do herbicides, on cut stumps straightforward way to do a weed pull it, where you see it. But it is, occasionally as I walk through, I look and, oh, there it is. You can see it now this time of the year because as Doe was, and some of the other folks have said to us, is that the invasives, they leaf out early and they lose their leaves late. And that's one of the competitive advantages they have. And so the buckthorn now, all the other stuff is losing it. You can see the buckthorn, it still has leaves. Next week, you probably won't be able to, but right now you can.
The Conservation Commission owns I don't know, call it a weed wrench or yeah, I have it, I've never used it, but we own one and maybe that'd be just a tool for,
There are a few of them that I've seen in there, that are an inch or two that I can't pull. But yeah, maybe. Not a bad place to give it a try.
all right, good. I'll add it to my project list so we don't forget it.
Oh,
Okay.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. See you on November 20th.
Hey, Sue, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You know,
Information
Brandon
about
had
the
that
sewer
rate.
lagoons over on Mount Sunapee.
Yeah.
and
Was there's been a controversial